All right, so we are on, we're recording, and we'll get going. Well, there's more tonight than I had anticipated. What I wanted to do, and Helen isn't here. All right. Well, maybe I'll hold this till later. I have something here that I wanted to talk about. We kind of started the conversation last week about love and about the number of different types of love and things like that in Greek. And this is something that I put together. It's been a couple of years now, and it was something that I had used for some marriage counseling, and it's just something I cribbed off the web. But what I'll do is I kind of did it for her benefit, so I'll hold off. Maybe she'll be here next week. But it's just a story about love, the different types of love, what the love means, how it's being used in the Bible. Because the discussion was, for those who weren't here last week, about loving somebody and loving people who are difficult to love. And so we kind of got in a discussion about what does it mean to love. We're called to love, but what kind of love are we called to express? Is it the huggy, lovey, I love you type of love? Or is it the agape love that we're expected to show for the brethren? Or is it the philos love that we're expected to show for all mankind? And actually in the Bible it uses both of them, especially when Jesus is confronting Peter after the resurrection. And remember that classic encounter that he has, and he says, "Do you love me?" And he says, "Well, of course I love you. Well, feed my sheep." "Do you love me?" "Well, of course I love you." Well, if you look at how he's asking that in the Greek, Jesus is asking him, "Do you love me agape? Do you love me like the brethren, like this godly love? Do you love me to that extent?" But the response that Peter gives is what? "No, I love you philos. I love you like I love, all my friends and everybody else." And that's how that encounter goes until finally Jesus says, "Well, do you love me philos?" And he says, "Yes, I love you philos." So it's kind of an interesting discussion that they had. And the point is that even though it's translated as love, "Do you love me? Yes, I love you. Do you love me? Yes, I love you." It's not quite the same. And in some of the translations it says, "Do you love me?" And then his response is kind of like, how'd they put it? Something about friendship. "Yes, you're my friend," or something like that. But "Do you love me?" "Yes, you're my friend." Which I guess is probably a good translation. Kind of loses something in the rhythm. But that's the point that they're trying to make, is that he's not saying love. I don't love you as I love the brethren, that godly love that we're supposed to have. Instead, it's the brotherly love that, love mankind.
Do you think Peter, in responding that way, was acknowledging that he didn't love Jesus?
I don't know. That's probably a good question. You have to understand too what had happened up to that point.
Yeah, because of how he knew he had betrayed him.
Right.
He didn't want to say that he loved him that way because he knew that his actions hadn't shown that. Maybe.
Yeah, could be.
So he was being humble, really, in his response.
He was being humble, but also it's interesting that because of his responses, Jesus still told him to feed his sheep.
Yeah.
So it didn't say, "Oh, you don't love me agape. You don't love me with that godly love as you should for all other Christians. Well, get out of here." Mm-hmm. Instead, he says, "Feed my sheep." So he still had, and I think, you can read all different kinds of things about it. But if you see that, maybe that's part of how he knows that Peter is going to develop that agape love by feeding the sheep. Mm. And maybe there's a lesson there for us too. We come to church and we say, "Gee, I come to church, I do this, I do that, I don't feel holy. I come to church and I don't think my prayers make it past the ceiling, this, that, and everything else." Well, when was the last time you fed the sheep? When was the last time you actually did something for somebody else, that you actually went out of your way to help somebody? Showed that love, showed that Christ-like love. Because in order to get it, you have to give it, right? And again, look at the situation that St. Peter was in. He had denied him 3 times with a curse and ran away. So, and it's interesting too, when I think it was it the lesson I was reading this Sunday, when the angel talks to him and says, "Go tells the myrrh-bearing women, tell the disciples and Peter what had happened." And I thought that was kind of interesting, because I tell the disciples and Peter what had happened, to make sure that we understand, we see that Peter was still included, even though that he had denied. And I think by that time, if you read it, he had wept bitterly. He had separated himself from the rest of the brethren, with the rest of the disciples and the whole family, as it were, because of that embarrassment that he had. And also scared for his life. Definitely, I mean, there's that factor. I mean, so it shows a lot of humanness to him, to that story, and we could talk about that. But that's an interesting study. And this is, like I said, I just pulled this off the website. And he talks about 5 loves here, because he also uses the word mania, where manic comes from, because that's used in Acts. But he references C.S. Lewis, The Four Loves, if you ever read that. And that talks about the other 4 too. So he throws one in there, I guess, just to make it original. So anyways, any questions or anything about last week? So we finished up step 8, didn't we? And now we're on to step 9. And what is step 9? Did everyone get a copy of this that they wanted? Who wants it?
I don't know if I ever did or not.
There you go. You want to get one over there? So we're over here on step 9, and this one here it's a short one, but I kind of like it. This right here has been a real good one. He talks about the remembrance of wrongs / malice, and when I was looking at this, I mean, to me, I kind of saw it between the passion and dispassion. I saw the passion as holding a grudge, remembrance of wrong, and the dispassion is forgiving completely of what happened. So we start out here. Remembrance of wrongs comes as a final point of anger. So if you take a look, the way our text is separated, we're in part 3 now, spiritual passions, and he starts right out by bringing us back, as St. John Climacus brings us back to the previous step, which was anger, right? We're talking about anger, or meekness, right? But he says anger. He says, remembrance of wrong comes as a final point of anger. It is a keeper of sins. It hates a just way of life. It is the ruin of virtues, the poison of the soul, a worm in the mind. It is the shame of prayer, a cutting off of supplication, a turning away from love, a nail piercing the soul. It is a pleasureless feeling cherished in the sweetness of bitterness. Kind of poetic here. It is a never-ending sin, an unsleeping wrong, rancor by the hour, a dark and loathsome passion. It comes to be, but has no offspring, so that one need not say much about it. So remember when we were talking about anger and some of those other ones, remember he always kind of had like a family tree there. He would say, this is the passion, and this is the father, this is the mother, these are the daughters, whatever, and this is how this whole thing is interrelated. So now he comes up with this remembrance of wrong, this malice, and he says, this thing has no offspring, it just is. It's that bad. He says, a dark and loathsome passion, it comes to be but has no offspring. It's there. So that one need not say much about it. Kind of interesting. So this remembrance of wrongs, and I like the way he puts it here, it's a pleasureless feeling cherished in the sweetness of bitterness. Now what is he talking about here? I mean, what's he trying to get us to feel when we're talking about this remembrance of wrong? How does it feel when you remember a wrong? Why don't we keep playing it over and over again?
It's corrosive.
It's corrosive. To whom?
To the one holding that.
To holding the grudge, right. What does it do to the person who you hold the grudge against?
Nothing.
Probably not much, right?
It can make you sick. This can make you sick.
There you go.
You're physically
Yeah.
sick if you continue to dwell on, a wrong someone has. I mean, it plays with your mind.
Right. And that's what he's talking about. It's a worm in your mind. It's something that you just can't set aside. But I like the way he puts it, that it's cherished in the sweetness of bitterness, right? So it's kind of like that little pet, maybe like a little sin or a little habit that you have, and gee, I'd really like to get rid of it because it really bothers me, but I don't want to. For some reason, there's that sweetness of bitterness. There's something about it that I really don't want to get rid of it. There must be something comforting about that.
And we should all be honest, because there's been times when we haven't wanted to forgive people. It's just more fun to kind of be mad for a while.
Sure. Well, you got to play it out. Except your husband.
But it's not, of course it's not right.
Especially if you really don't like the person. Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Or if you're trying to justify anything.
There you go.
right.
So think about it. A lot of times it might be to the extent of the wrong. If you felt it was really, really bad, right? And what are you going to do to him? Probably nothing. Physically. Maybe you can yell. I don't know. But I mean, you're not going to hit him. You're not going to kill him. Hopefully, all these other things. So what else can you do? You can I would say you can murder them in your mind, right? Isn't that what Jesus says? If you say raka, if you curse somebody, and if you hold that kind of grudge against somebody, you're murdering them just the same, right? It's that extreme. It's those extremes that Jesus likes to pronounce, right? Even though you don't do something, just to think it, to live it in your mind is just as bad as doing that, because you are murdering them over and over and over again. So I don't know, maybe murder them once and get it over. But I mean, if you constantly live that, and what it is you're kind of enjoying that, because each time, it's like, oh yeah, now I'm going to hate them a little bit more. I mean, it doesn't bother them, but it's you.
It's a justification for poor behavior on your part.
Sure it is.
Right?
And it's a justification for holding the grudge.
Yeah.
You're justified to do that. You should be mad, right? You should hate them. I mean,
And then if you talk to other people and then they go, yeah, you should be mad. I don't blame you for being mad.
Right.
So you keep going on.
Yeah, you're like, yeah, maybe I should be madder.
Circling it around.
Sure. And you kind of let that fester, and that's where that worm in your mind. And it says also the shame of prayer, the cutting off of supplications. Why is that? What is I mean, when I think about this, what are we told when we come up for communion? When we come up for the Eucharist, what are we told to do? What does St. Paul say when we come?
Fear, faith, and love.
Yeah, fear and faith and love, right? But what should we do? Should we come up there
If
with
you have anything against anyone.
against your brothers? What should you do? Yeah, take care of it first before you bring your sacrifice. Jesus uses that from the temple, but St. Paul says the same thing. Really, when you take the Eucharist in an unworthy manner, what are you doing? You're eating condemnation on yourself, and that's essentially what it is. So if you come up there and you say, "I love God," I want to partake in His body, His holy body, but come up there in that sort of manner, and that it takes a lot of soul searching. I mean, I respect somebody who can come up there and not take communion, as opposed to someone who does it just out of habit, and that's something that can
The
be.
line would probably be half as long.
I don't know. Depends on which half, but yeah, but you got a good point there. If we really, really do some soul searching, maybe we need to think about that. But I mean, I think it's more important that you do go to your neighbor, to whoever you have those sort of arguments with, or even if they don't even know about it. We talked about that with anger, right? I mean, the person might not even know you're angry with them, but still, you need to treat that as an active discussion, an active confrontation, I guess. It's really what you're doing. Even though I didn't do anything to this person, they did something, probably didn't even think about it. They either ignored me, they somehow hurt my pride. That's where it all starts out. They hurt my pride somehow, and so now I'm upset, right? And so instead of confronting that person, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hold that in, and then go take communion. So,
has anybody ever been to a liturgy outside the country?
To what?
Liturgy outside of the U.S. liturgy? In most Balkan countries and in most of the Orthodox countries, the priest will turn around and they'll say, "In the fear of God, faith and love draw near," and then turn right back around. Nobody goes to communion.
yeah.
Nobody goes because of what we're talking
Yeah.
about. So,
Yes.
in most countries,
Well, also, I have a coworker who's Ukrainian, who goes Ukraine Orthodox, and it was an interesting story. I'm just going to, right on that line, and that's the same thing. He comes out, the fear of God and faith and love draw near, and she says he barely stops, he turns around and goes in. Well, she was having knee replacement, and so she talked to the priest, got unction and made a confession, because usually they only make confession during Easter time, during Great Lent. And so I think it was a bishop serving that church, and he says, "Well, this Sunday come by and take communion, because you're gonna go through the surgery and you should do that." So she said when he came out there and she came right up there and she said she was the only one who took communion. Mm-hmm. Well, after she did, she said all the old ladies in the church started, "What do you think you're doing, taking communion? You're not worthy to take communion. You're not. This isn't Easter. This isn't Pascha." And that was kind of an eye opener, because I thought, well, gee, if you're in a position to take it, and that's between you and your priest, then you should. But she said, no, they have their confession. They do it once, during Great Lent, but most of the time it's on Holy Saturday. And she said they have a line going out the door, and she said even during the Pascha service, people are knocking on the back on the back of the iconostasis on the altar area, and the bishop goes out there and he hears their confessions right up to, you know,
The Cherubim.
the jigs. Exactly.
That's just not
All
right.
the
I'm
time.
sorry, but that's just not right.
Well, that's-
Where is this?
This was the Ukrainian church. Now, Ukrainian Orthodox Church, but I mean, as Father said,
Well, in Bulgaria, I was at Pentecost. I served with the Patriarch in Bulgaria. This is in their cathedral, right? The big, huge church in downtown Sofia. 2,000 people in church, and communion was 5 people.
oh,
Out of like 2,000. So it was literally like, you know, the priest walked down the steps and communed by 5 people that walked up, and I had seminarians with me that, like, they didn't make it out of the back of the altar quick enough to go, you know. And they had to go back in and get it inside the altar.
Oh, no
because
kidding.
Yeah, it was bad.
How
But-
did they get such a wrong understanding of
Well, there was a teaching and it was a controversy on Mount Athos about how it was a battle, and I can't remember what the years were, but it was a battle between frequent communion and
yeah.
once a year communion. It's a balance, just like everything else. You know, you like you said, you can't make it habitual. The church finally decided that it can't be something that's out of habit, you know, and you're just going because, oh, it's Sunday and we need to go to communion so I can get my zapivka. And then there's the other side of the fence that said, well, you should never be worthy to go to communion, maybe once a year, like at Pascha.
Right.
And there's got to be a balance in between that. You have to not make it something that's habitual, but at the same time, you have to really take those words at heart in the fear of God and with faith and love draw near. And if you don't have all 3 of those things, you shouldn't be coming up to the chalice.
Right.
So I'm old country and I didn't even know it.
Probably.
Yeah. Now, I know that I've had people come up and get blessings at the chalice, and that was kind of a surprise the first time that happened, because I sent them over to Father Paul, because Father Paul never told me that I was allowed to do that. But you can come up, and I don't know, I'm not even going to what's your thought on those, Father?
Well, the Ukrainians, since nobody goes to communion, they'll still all get in line, and then you'll stick the chalice over on their head. Or they'll wait till they commune the people, and everybody will be waiting in a group on the left-hand side of the altar. And while the choir's still singing, "Come receive the body of Christ," he just goes boom, 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 and then walks back in the altar. And
Used to do that in St. Nicholas.
They
I
do that
didn't
there,
know
too.
why, but yeah.
Oh, they do, really?
Yeah, I remember that from my early days. I couldn't understand what the significance
At
of
St.
it
Nicholas,
was.
it was people who were sick or having ailments.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it wasn't just because. You know.
Okay.
Is it canonical then that you're supposed to attend Vespers in order to prepare yourself?
If you go
In
to
order
if you
to-
go to the letter of the law, if you go to a Russian Rocourt church down in Ann Arbor, if you don't take confession with that priest
Yes.
or you're like Helen went up for communion, and the priest said, well, you know, did you go to confession? And she's like, yes, my priest is right back there. You know, like I was standing in the back. And it's, you know, they'll question you at the chalice. It's you have to take confession. You have to be at the service prior or have been to an evening service like within the past few days, and they'll question you. They'll question you at the chalice. But you just have to take that with humility too. You can never be offended. Like, of course I went to confession. You know, you always have to take everything with church things with humility. If the priest says, I don't think you should go to confession, or I don't think you should go to communion because such and such and such, you don't take that as a punishment, you take that as a healing, you know, and things like that. So.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. So moving on, we're talking about the remembrance of wrongs. It says there's nothing more destructive. This is the author speaking here. To spiritual life, the remembrance of wrongs. It is in fact a complete contradiction to the imitation of God. And they refer to Psalm 129 or 130. If you, Lord, kept record of sins, O Lord, who could stand? So when we remember the sins, we're actually going against the life of God. Now, why is that? What do we know about God? When we come by to confession, what happens?
Forgiving.
You're forgiving, and what
He already
else?
knows.
It's wiped
He
clean.
already knows.
He already knows. You're forgiving.
It's wiped clean.
It's wiped clean, but it's not like erase and I can kind of go, oh yeah, let me see, I can still see it. But no, it's forgotten. It's completely forgotten.
It's the next
That's
line
it.
in that song. For thee there is forgiveness. Yeah.
Right. If you, O Lord, kept a record of sins, O Lord, who could stand? And so the idea is that, and it also talks about here about the 7 times 70 and things like that, about how people might use that literally. But the whole idea is that we need to forgive and we need to forget those sins. We can't hold those sins against somebody. Now, I've heard, kind of splitting the hair here about, well, I know so-and-so is going to do this, or if you know so-and-so, every time you go up to see them, they're going to hit you or insult you. Should you still do that? Well, maybe I won't go up and see them, but certainly I will forgive that wrong and hopefully forget that wrong from the standpoint of holding the grudge. I mean, I'm going to remember that the last time they hit me, but I'm not going to put myself in that position again. I mean, it's kind of common sense. But are you going to remember it to the point where, again, going back to that first paragraph, where we're going to dwell on it and let it eat us up and kind of be corrosive to our souls and our minds and things? No, we should not. And something that I try to do, especially at work, because of all the different encounters and things like that, is that if somebody does something wrong, and maybe we have some words or something like that, the next time I see them, I try to say, look, we're starting all over again. I'll come up there and say, hey, how's it going? And just try to start all over again. Just not pretending it didn't happen, but certainly not dwelling on it. Not saying, oh, wait a minute, I'm mad at you, so therefore I'm not going to say hi to you or have to bring it up, even in a joking manner, but to try to, kind of open that wound again, and let's see if we can, kind of pick at the scab and get things going again, because I should still be mad. Or maybe to be defensive, because I think maybe they're going to go ahead and do that to me first, right? Right? So.
Or they'll say, how could you talk to me without gosh, I just had it in my head and I lost it.
Acknowledging what you did.
Yeah, how could you talk without acknowledging what
Yeah, how dare you? It's like, hey, well.
Step 9.
So it's, but that's the whole idea. When we forget those trespasses, and we talk about that in the prayer as well, when we forget those trespasses, we ask God to do that. We need to do the same. So I'm down here on the next page. I don't have the page numbers here. So he puts here, it says, when we have mastered and purified our anger, wrongs will be forgotten. He says, the man who has put a stop to anger has also wiped out remembrance of wrongs, since offspring can only come from a living parent. That's a kind of interesting way of putting that. So if we completely forget and completely stop that anger, what he's saying is, you'll have no need, or you won't be remembering those wrongs, because that anger has been laid aside. Because again, those wrongs come from what? It comes from that anger that you're holding. You say that you forgive them, you say that you put that anger aside, but if you're remembering those wrongs, then you're still remembering. And so St. John tells us, let your malice and your spite be turned against the devils. And we talked about that too when we talked about anger, right?
So important.
So important. That gets back to hate the sin, love the sinner, right? Not the other way around. Right? Because when we see that, and a lot of times you hear that too when you talk to child psychologists, stuff, say, oh, don't say you're a bad child, what you did is bad. But I mean that is kind of the same thing that we're looking at here. So when your malice is towards the evil part of it, then you can really focus on the part that you should be angry with, not the person. I mean, I guess that means it's okay to hold grudges against evil, against the devil, I guess, right?
Is that what it says?
Yeah, I mean, so turn it against that evil and say, I hate that evil. And that's essentially what St. John was saying in the previous chapters, is that you need to save that anger. There's a lot of evil out there that we can be angry at, instead of other people, instead of our brothers and sisters. Right? We can see all that injustice in the world and really be angry at it, and hopefully, rather than, again, letting that dwell in us and just, this what a terrible world or something like that, maybe that can then be used to turn into action to try to do something positive. Certainly to pray for those who are in that situation. Certainly to pray for those who are slaves to that sin, who need our prayers. Maybe that'll get us, put us in action to do something, maybe some kind of charitable works beyond that, right? And that, I would say, would be how you could take that anger, something negative, and turn it positive. So he talks about when we come to this, and he kind of, I don't know why he went this quote. Who said this? He said, To quote a well-known rock song, I want my anger to be healthy. I want my anger just for me. I couldn't. I don't know. I tried to. Is that Led Zeppelin or something? I don't. Yeah. Anyways, I don't know who's.
No.
Google.
Yeah, Google. Yeah, somebody Google. I don't know. I heard that one. Okay. I didn't. It must have been well known where he is because it's certainly not well known to me. But he talks about praying. And when we talk about praying, he says, let the prayer of Jesus put it to shame, the prayer which cannot be uttered in the company of malice. Now, he kind of gets into this little discussion here. Which prayer? Did you find it?
Why is he quoting Metallica?
Oh, you're kidding me.
No wonder we didn't
No
know
wonder,
that.
yeah.
It's a good thing. The first person that would have said that.
Oh, yeah, that's Metallica. Yeah. I can just see that. Yeah. You got the T-shirt and all this stuff.
Just kidding.
Cindy knew it, she just didn't want to.
Oh, humility. Yeah. Okay. Oh gosh. Yeah. No.
It's so very true though, that some people do just, they want to hang on to that. You know, I've even had people in my life that I love with my whole heart. And, you know, well, I'm not coming to church. Christians do this or Christians say that. And I'm like, mm-hmm. And that's exactly why I'm still there.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be there to help each other and to encourage each other. And
Right.
change each other.
Exactly.
Grow together.
Exactly.
And-
I mean, and it gets back to that case in point that we're all sinners. It's like I like to say they say it's a hospital for sinners as opposed to a museum for saints or some of those other some other ways of putting it. And that's essentially what we're living in here. I mean, it's the same thing. It's like, I feel sick, but man, I'm not going to the hospital. There's a lot of sick people there.
Yeah.
Who goes to the hospital? Sick people. And if Christ is a physician and this is the hospital for our soul,
But you can get really sick in a hospital too.
and I hate to say, oh yeah, you can
That's
say-
why they want to get you out of there as fast as possible, right?
Yeah.
No, I
It's
tell them it's not a good place to be sick.
It's not a good place to be sick.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Pick up.
But the hardest part for me, the most challenging in reading this, is that for people, present company excluded, of course, who habitually anger me. It's like as soon as the scab heals over, then they're poking at it again. And
Now it's become your sin, right?
That's a good point.
but
So
that's
Handing
that's
it
the
off.
problems.
Yeah.
We got the person, then you've got yourself to deal
Right.
with. We got
Right.
enough to deal with on our own without having this
Right.
person.
But you know what I mean? It's some
Yeah.
that burr under your saddle.
Sure.
It makes it hard. If you have in everyday life, we encounter people that we have disagreements with or that anger us. But it's those few people who are always poking the bear.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I'm the bear. And it's hard. It's hard then to let go when you're constantly being reminded of an injustice.
Sure.
Do you have to be with those people?
Unfortunately,
Whoever they
I do. Through marriage.
But present company accepted.
But
But present
yeah,
company is not, so you can do the math on your own.
Yeah.
But it's not just, family. It's
Well,
people you work with. It's
sure.
Right.
people that you are, with on a regular basis, and it's hard sometimes.
Well, sometimes that's part of the sport, and I've worked with people like that too, who they say, well, let's see if we can make so and so squirm, and they'll start doing something, and it's like, come on, grow up, and the thing is they'll be in a position that they can dictate your time or dictate what you have to do. It's a long story, but they think it would be funny, where they would sit there and you would have to bring a document in, and they would review it. And they would look at it if they saw one little thing out of place. Then they would start going through all 12 pages and make you sit there as they went through all 12 pages and correct your grammar and everything else. It's a story. But the point is that they go, oh yeah, well, we just like to watch people squirm because we can do it. So it's a little power play. So again, you could sit there and just reach across the table. But I mean, it's...
Well, other times, I think we can internalize things as being picked on.
Yes.
When that's not necessarily what they're trying to do to us.
Right.
Sometimes the communication isn't always right.
Mhm.
You know?
And what
I
passion
think there's-
causes that?
What's that?
What passion causes that?
Um,
There's only one.
The P word?
Right, yeah.
what?
Somebody paid attention on Sunday. It's teen class, thank you.
But no, yeah, that's true. And a lot of times, and I think we talked about that in one of the earlier steps, is that we always think someone's after us, and that is kind of our pride that gets hurt. But also, it's kind of almost an arrogance to think that this person is living their life just to make mine miserable. Especially if it's someone on the other end of the phone that you can't, you know.
I don't know, I beg to differ. I think there are some people that are out there to make my life miserable.
Archie Bunker, I think that's what Edith was there. Always made
Oh, yeah.
Father, where does it say, I can't, I'm blanking, gosh, if this is from scripture, I'm gonna be really embarrassed.
Probably
But
Shakespeare.
Just,
Probably
you can
turn the
shame me.
recorder off.
Okay, yeah, hang on.
But where does it say that the only way to truly forgive or to forget the wrongs is to truly pray for them? Where's that from? I don't think it's from scripture. I think
it's
it's
not from scripture.
I thought it was from St. John Climacus. And I'm not just talking about, if somebody's poking the bear, so to speak.
Right.
I'm not just talking about saying, well, God bless Joe.
Yeah.
I'm saying like really, truly, you can never hate somebody if you pray for them. If you're
Right.
truly praying for them, you could never hate somebody. That's the ultimate prescription for anybody that you have any anger, any malice, or anything against, is to pray for them. And again, it can't just be, I hope that Rebecca gets her due reward for poking the bear, whatever the case is. But it has to be true repentance and sorrow for that person. That's the only way that you can ever overcome anger, jealousy, everything that you talk about in these books. That's the only way that you can overcome that with another fallen individual. And to direct your hate, again, like he said here, always direct your hate towards the devil, who's poking them just as much as he's poking you.
Yeah, because he's the one who's trying to instigate
Sure,
everything.
That's his favorite game.
I don't have the page number, Father, but it's in the bottom it's at the bottom of 2 pages from where you are. A true sign of having completely mastered this putrefaction, 82, thank you, will come not when you pray for the man who offended you, but when you give him presents, not when you invite him to share a meal with him, but only when you, on hearing the catastrophe that has afflicted him in body or soul, you suffer and you lament for him, for yourself. So saying even just praying for him is not enough. When you master this is when you're actually lamenting and you actually feeling empathy for them.
Yeah, it can't just be it can't just be a saying something though. Like that's what I was trying
Yeah. Just
Well, we've talked about minor angerings and grievances and stuff, but how do you forget something like murder? How do you forgive and forget something that big? How do you do that?
right.
in
Well,
your
the simple
life?
answer is by the grace of God, because you can't do it yourself, and you just said so. But do you forget that so and so got murdered? No, I don't think that's what it is. It's do you forget it to the point where you're holding that kind of a grudge? I mean, that's tough. I don't know. I don't know what to say because I haven't had someone who's murdered. Yes.
I was thinking that same thing when I was reading this. And have you ever heard of Corrie ten Boom? Anybody? No. She was a Dutch woman who harbored Jews, and she and her sister ended up in Ravensbrück concentration camp. Her sister died there, and she survived up to when they were released. And following that, she chose to go back to Germany after having been back home in Holland to speak to them about forgiveness, because she knew that the people there really needed that, to know that God forgave them.
Wow.
And so she was at a particular venue speaking, and at the end, people would, some of them come up to want to speak to her. And this one man came up, and she immediately recognized him as one of the guards, a very cruel one from Ravensbrück.
Wow.
And he said something like, I really appreciated what you had to say, and I was a guard. He didn't recognize her, because probably, you know, thousands of people.
Right.
And I know, I've become a Christian, and I know God has forgiven me for the cruel things that I did, but I'd like to hear you say that you forgive me. Again, not realizing, you know, that there was this.
Right.
I mean, she recognized him immediately and pictured, you know, having to strip naked in front of him and, you know, being whipped. And so she just didn't, she said she didn't feel like she could at all, you know, like, I can't say this to this man. And he's got his hand out, you know, wanting to, and she said finally, she just prayed inside, Lord Jesus, I will put my hand out, you have to do the rest. And she did, and she said it was like an electric current that just went down her arm into her hand and met with his hand. And there was, she had the love of God for him. So like you said, it's just God, it's his grace, we can't do it.
Right. Especially something that difficult.
I mean, yeah, every time I read that story, it makes me cry, you know?
Yeah, it's tough stuff, and especially if you've actually experienced that. I mean, you know, anything that's that kind of wrong, to have someone come by. And the thing is she did not forget that. She remembered that,
Oh, no.
but she was able to overcome that remembrance. I think, I mean, I believe that's what it is. When you say forget, it's not an instant amnesia. I don't know, Father. I mean, you're right. How do you forget that? How do you forget someone got murdered?
And Deacon, she said that what came to her was what we've been talking about, that God says, you must forgive. As you have been forgiven, you must forgive. And she said, you know, so she knew that she had to. So it was just a complete matter of obedience.
Right.
She said, I stuck out my hand
that,
and it was like a piece of wood, you know, just like, but then he provided the rest.
That's right.
So.
Did I tell a sermon about that Romanian priest in the concentration camp?
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
That's another example of a priest that gave confession to a person that beat him to the point of death.
Right.
And that's, you know, that's the hardest type of
Is that the
love.
book Father Arseny? You ever read that?
I've read that book. Yeah, no, this is a different. This is actually this was the story was written by a Protestant, I think, who was in one of the, I can't remember the name of the author off the top of my head, but that's along those same lines. There's and you know, you hear these stories all the time of people that forgive people that have murdered a friend or murdered a child, and do you see how much grace comes out of and it doesn't just affect those two people, but all of those stories are heartwarming, they're inspirational to hundreds of people, thousands of people that hear that story. So even though it's that much harder, that forgiveness has that much more grace.
Exactly.
So it's just to keep
Well, we talked about that with the guy that shot those Amish children.
Right. How the parents were.
Yeah, and how that whole community turned around and, you know, forgave them, supported them. And you want to talk about somebody who has a right, in our sense, who has a right to go over there and demand the full extent of the law, or take it into your own hands and string them up yourself. I mean, you could say, yeah, if anybody was justified to do it, was them, but they just showed that grace. And that was the same thing. I mean, people who weren't Amish, probably people who weren't even Christians or religious folk, they're just like, this is amazing.
Right.
Because they see that extent of Christ's teaching in their lives, and it's lived, and something very real. And as Father says, when you do that, that grace and that strength and that power actually multiplies a lot more. I mean, you know, it's like, well, yeah, here's two people here, but then you could see that just that ripple effect, and people are like, wow, those are people that actually practice what they preach. They walk the talk kind of thing, you know, as Jesus did. So it's amazing. Now, when we talk about that, what do the authors say about a good way to try to, I guess it would be St. John Climacus, about helping you to forget these wrongs, this anger? He talks about that.
What was your question?
What does the author say a good way to help you forget?
The remedy on the bottom of page 80.
Yeah, what does it say there? He says, he's talking about the prayer of Jesus, right? This is how the author puts it, which is kind of interesting. Down at the bottom of the page, let the prayer of Jesus put it to shame, that prayer which cannot be uttered in the company of malice. Now, which prayer? It's kind of interesting here because he talked about two different prayers. And I think when you say the prayer of Jesus, well, it's the Jesus prayer. But the author is making a point here, and interesting enough, it's actually kind of like it's almost like he's cribbing the footnotes out of this book here when he talks about that point.
The help me to forget, like.
Yeah,
Is that
so
how he
forgive
says
us
it?
our,
Trespass.
as we forgive,
Our debtors.
debtors' trespasses. And that's our prayer to God, our Father who art in heaven. Forgive us our trespasses, forgive us our debts, as we forgive those who trespass or are debtors against us, right? And so that's what they're saying. They're saying he didn't really specify which prayer of Jesus. That's the prayer when the disciples said, teach us how to pray. He said, this is how you do it, right? And we call it the Lord's Prayer. I've heard it called the model prayer. Depends on how, whether you say prayers or you pray. But I mean, that's the whole idea, is that this is what Jesus is saying. And so what the author St. John is saying is that you cannot have a remembrance of wrong when you're saying the Lord's Prayer, because the first thing you're asking for is forgiveness of my trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. What did Jesus say about that? What's the measure that we use?
You are, you're judged by the measure that you judge.
Right. As you judge is how you'll be judged also. That's the measure, right? Now think about that for a minute. If you think about how well, I think about that, how well you forgive all those people out there that are just put there because for some reason they want to make my life miserable, and then I turn around and say, God forgive me, right? What measure, and that's always my concern, what measure will I be forgiven? Any sin. And of course we could justify it. We say, well, I certainly didn't do this, that, or anything else. I certainly didn't murder. I certainly didn't, run a concentration camp. But that's where we kind of get in a legalistic mode and try to split that hairs. The thing is that you've sinned. You sinned, right?
Sin is sin.
Yeah, sin's a sin. And so when you come to God and you ask for that kind of forgiveness, it's a little tough when you say, God forgive me for these sins, but I can't find the time to forgive these people who have sinned against me. Forgive me for whatever sin I've committed, big, small, and different, and I won't forget that person who's trying to make my life miserable, right? Because I'm justified, and I know that they're a bad person. If I'm a good person, therefore God owes me forgiveness. That's kind of how it comes by. And again, pride, I would say, is probably the center of that when we refuse to do it.
That pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, yeah.
How does the Roman Catholic Church view that then? That you be judged according to how you were, what you just mentioned. But the Roman Catholic Church has different levels of sin. You have mortal sins. You have venial sins. So how does that work? And how do they explain that?
It gets too confusing.
Well, is it
because of how they'll punish you then? Like if you do
Yeah,
this
the
level,
level.
you have to do so many Hail Marys, but if you do this many, then you have to do some more.
I know that there are I know that punitive system exists, and there's a treasury of mercies. That's like this that the saints have, that you pull off their time in purgatory and add it to your own or something.
I did a report about purgatory. Remember that?
That's right, yeah.
But I was just wondering how that
Yeah.
worked.
Purgatory isn't a dogma, though. That is for Roman Catholics, unless one of the popes has changed it recently, that's kind of like, we think it's there, but we don't know for sure. If you look up their dogma, it's not technically what Roman Catholics consider dogma.
Okay.
Now, most Roman Catholic priests will state it as such, but if you actually look up their catechism book, what the Pope puts out as actual dogma.
It wasn't like ex cathedra. He didn't say that or anything.
Right. So it's that, they're here, so we believe there's a purgatory, so we teach it, but it's not technically Roman Catholic dogma. I forget what book they had.
Who came up with it in the first place?
I think it was a fundraiser.
Was it
I'm serious.
Someone did a report on it.
Okay.
It's been a long time.
Do you have it with you?
It was someone a long time ago.
Someone a long time ago?
Was it What was it? It wasn't Anselm. Who was the?
Well, Anselm of Canterbury, he came up with a
There was
justification,
some Roman Catholic guy, I know that.
but not purgatory.
Who was it that did that? It was, wasn't it a response to something, some kind of I don't know.
Sounds like the same
It
time.
was a way to get money, you know?
It was indulgence.
A relative committed a really bad sin, if you caught them, you know, they wouldn't have to spend more time.
Yeah, those are,
Let's
Serve that punishment. They gotta stay in
That's one of the big reasons Protestant Reformation.
yes, yes, absolutely.
This is why you can't say that the Orthodox and Catholic are close. And when people say, "Oh, you're this," that was like the old, like
So-
before I went to seminary, it was always the Catholic Church is just the older, the sister to the Orthodox Church. Oh, jeez.
No.
Yeah, here it's, I mean, and this is just depends on where you look, but they have it presented as a Roman Catholic doctrine, not dogma, but doctrine, a place or state of suffering inhabited by the souls of sinners who are expiating their sins before going to heaven.
What is that word, appreciate?
Expiating, I think
Expiating.
it is, yeah.
Expiating? Okay, expiating.
Like examining, you're up there somewhere.
No, working off your
Working it off, yeah, working it off.
They're in their
Huh?
slave
That's your
camp.
sentence.
Yeah, your sentence, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, is that
Yeah, because from what I read, like you have to be pure when you enter heaven.
Right,
Like you can't have any sins at all before you enter heaven. So you have to go to purgatory to like get those
To
sins
work
away
them
from
off.
you. Yeah.
yeah. And that could be, what did you say, it was thousands of years? Or just,
Yeah. These guys said that the average Christian spends 1,000 to 2,000 years in purgatory.
Dear Lord.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right.
And apparently it's just awful. They said that like it's comparable to hell.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you're in this state of
limbo.
Suffering?
nothingness.
What
in
a
way.
horrible thing. Can you
I
imagine
know, how
teaching that to your
scary is
kids?
I think the point is you usually.
You better be
talk
good
that.
or
I was,
else.
just so you know, I was raised Roman Catholic.
Oh, Lordy.
That was after.
Did you get told you were going to go to purgatory?
That was the 11th century. So that was after the schism. Is when they.
Okay,
when
so,
that
but who, is
The
it,
Hindus kind of do a similar thing, don't they, where you keep getting reincarnated until you finally get it right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there you go.
According to a gnat, if you were bad, or
Keep whacking you in the head.
Right. If you were Colonel Sanders, you could get reincarnated as a chicken.
right.
that'll teach
If
you.
that's what they really use.
The devil sure has a good imagination, doesn't he? He's coming up with all these things.
Yeah, history of purgatory.
Yeah, tell me if I'm wrong, but, another prayer from Christ was, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Exactly.
And many times, I mean, in my own mind, because I don't have it right, that's so very true. People just, they either haven't been taught or they don't realize they were, they don't have the guidance or whatever. They really don't know what they're doing.
Sure.
And
Well-
we're also different too. I think a lot of time, someone can do something that they wouldn't feel would upset them at all, but it would upset the other person.
See, yeah, and
Here again, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know they're upsetting you.
Exactly.
And that's true too, because I know, like they tell you, we'll treat somebody as you want to be treated. Well, some people don't really, they'll say, well, I don't care how and they actually act.
Yeah.
It's like, well, hey, if somebody does that to me, I wouldn't care, so, or maybe it's more of an excuse, but rather than treating people the way you should treat them, or the way they want to be treated, you
Right.
say, well, and it's just an excuse to, I guess, maybe treat people worse than you should be treating them. But,
Like my story with Jack, when the fight with him and Brian, and, I said, you shouldn't have hit him, and he says, well, it says do unto others, as you would have them do.
and so it's fine with, gotta use that one, huh? Right, so.
I was in trouble.
Yeah. So when he talks about, so let me ask you this, and it's just kind of interesting. St. John recommends that we say the prayer of the Lord, so let's just say the Lord's Prayer. When was the last time, I've never tried this, I thought that was kind of a novel idea, which it shouldn't be, because we say it all the time, every Sunday, right? Hopefully every day in our prayer life too. But when somebody angers you, do you say that prayer? It's almost like counting to 10, right? Someone has angered you, and the first thing you want to do is lash out, or you don't lash out and you want to sit there and compartmentalize it, kind of let it fester a little bit, have some fun with it. Have you ever thought about maybe using the Lord's Prayer as a way of trying to see if you can, I guess, reflect on that and maybe pull that out and not remember that wrong? Only because you're turning that around and saying, well, how do I want to be remembered to God? Whether it's 2,000 years in purgatory or somewhere else. How do I want to be remembered to God? Right? Do I want to be remembered the same way I'm remembering this person? Yeah, if they just think about that. If you have that grudge and they come to you for something, I mean, would you be able to act in a loving manner, knowing that you're continually remembering and continually dwelling on this one affront? It would be kind of hard. I mean, you could say, well, okay, I'll forgive them, but boy, I'm never going to go out of my way for them. You know, you see them broke down on the side of the road, just kind of, right? Or you see them maybe carrying it. Yeah, it's like, haha, remember me? Or you see them, with their hands full. It's like, well, no, the things to do, and you kind of look out of the corner of your eye, and yeah, why not? I mean, is that really forgiveness?
There, huh?
Yeah, well, no. But I mean, is that the right way to be? I mean, is that?
That wasn't Orthodox.
But I mean, again, that is a remembrance of sin, and that's the remembrance of a wrong, and that's something that we're not letting go of, right? And
That's
then
how we act on that remembrance, though. It's one thing to remember,
right?
But if it loses its meaning after time, you would hope that it would.
Well, you'd hope, but I mean, you hear about blood feuds and all this other stuff that people just. I mean, even within a family, not outside a family.
Hey, we've had a lot of customers. I mean, when we first opened and years after, it was, they would give you all kinds of grief. But now there's a few that used to do it. They're some of the nicest people around. I don't know, maybe it was just because we were nice to them so many times that they finally...
Right.
But we could always go back and remember all the times that they yelled and hollered and everything else.
Sure.
But...
You were giving them their meds.
No.
Brian, maybe your service just got better.
Yeah.
Well, it could have.
See, it worked.
Well, they got better medicine.
They got better medicine.
That's all it was.
Than what you were dispensing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess what I was getting at, we remember it, but we don't remember it in the same light as it was.
Wonderful.
Sure. So like they say, time heals all wounds. Maybe. I don't know.
Killed them
Or
with
kill them
kindness.
with
That's what you do.
Stole your money.
Kill them with kindness. Yeah.
It always
Sure.
works.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's easier to forgive when someone has, now this may be prideful, when they've asked for forgiveness, but when they never ask for forgiveness.
Right.
Never, ever, ever, how do you go and forgive them? That's where I think I've learned prayer comes in.
Sure.
Because these situations, they may never see that they did anything wrong.
Right. And I think and a good point is, yeah, exactly.
You
And
have
a
to save
good
your own soul in a way.
and a good point is, how many of those
Go
people
down
that
the
crucified
ship
Christ
together.
ask for forgiveness?
And that
Paul?
takes me to the next
Oh,
part
yeah.
that St. John is talking
Mhm.
about, and I kind of didn't really
Oh, yeah, you like
get
that?
because, like what Ann is saying, if it's something that, maybe it's been a while that this person did something and they never asked for
Right.
forgiveness.
Can you read that, please? That paragraph, that one there
What page are
highlighted.
you on?
81.
81, right? That the highlighted paragraph
Okay,
there.
if after great effort you still fail to root out this thorn, and I think he's talking about remembrance of
Yeah,
wrongs,
yeah, exactly.
go to your enemy and apologize, if only with empty words, whose insincerity may shame you. Then, as conscience, like a fire, comes to give you pain, you may find that a sincere love of your enemy may come to life. And actually, it was from reading that I thought of the Corrie ten Boom thing. It wasn't
Right.
a true parallel, but she did the thing of, reaching out to him,
Right.
and then the sincere love came.
Right.
But what I don't understand, if it's an instance like Ann is saying, and it's been this long period of time, and you through prayer have been able to forgive that person to the best of your ability, even though they've never come to you. But then maybe,
But see,
you might every once in a while have a remembrance of the wrong. Are you supposed to go and apologize to them?
I gone, don't say my name, I have gone to this person and asked and told this person of the hurt, and they still didn't see. So now I have a choice to make. I have to pray for them and forgive them. I can't go back to them and say, regurgitate this over and over again.
Right.
No, but I think what St. John is saying is you go to them and say, you were wrong, but you actually say, please forgive me. I didn't mean to offend you or hurt you in any way. And in actuality, it was them who offended you. That's actually what he's telling you to do,
true?
to actually ask them, please forgive me.
Well, it says even if you don't feel it at that time.
Yeah.
If you do that, if you actually do that,
Then I'm
Well,
free from
but
it.
that's a good point. But think about this. Who is sinning? Who is sinning here? If you're remembering that wrong, who is sinning?
you are.
You are. So if you go and ask forgiveness to that person, is that being hypocritical? Is that being necessarily wrong?
Even if they don't understand what you're doing, you're doing it for yourself.
Sure, that's the whole thing. Selfish
But there are
reasons.
instances where you shouldn't do that. You can actually bring up a problem and hurt someone
Well,
by going to them to apologize for something that they don't even know they've done.
And we talked
you are
about that
holding
too. Yeah.
A grudge.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
There is a time and a place for that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that because this is a saint.
People get mad at me all the time. I'm okay with it.
And so should you be.
I wouldn't want to go to somebody who had no clue that they had hurt me.
Right.
And say, please forgive me because I've been holding this grudge against you.
Well, you don't say it that way.
Or please forgive me because...
You say it like this. Please forgive me if I've offended you in any way. I'm very sorry. They'll be like, huh? But that's all you do.
Yeah.
Just like you were the one that offended them.
Yeah.
Really, it was the other way around.
Exactly. It's kind of turning around.
And you don't try to explain anything, you don't do anything. You just, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and again, it
I
says...
can do it that way. I can see
Yeah,
it
because
that way.
and again, it comes back to maybe that pride. If you think, well, they're doing something wrong to me, right? So it's all them. Yeah, but maybe you actually did do something and you have no, we talked about that before, you have no recollection of what it was. Maybe just living your life, you did something wrong, maybe you said something that they didn't like. I find that always talking, so I find out later, a lot of times my wife will come by and say, do you know what you said this? I went, yeah, that's just, oh no, someone took offense to that, or someone could take offense to that, and I'm like, gee, okay, I never thought about that, but there, I may have hurt somebody that I didn't intend to.
Thus forgiveness Vespers every year. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's a tough time, but I mean, because you could possibly word, deed, neglect. I mean, there's things that we should do, and people are hurt. There's people hurt all the time. We talk about that. Forgive me, brothers, for all the things I've done, whether in word and deed, knowledge or in ignorance. And for me, it's probably mostly ignorance. But I mean, still, it's those are the things that we need to ask forgiveness for.
Now, what do you do if you can't go to the person? What if the person died?
I think you could still pray for them. Certainly, I think you can still ask for their forgiveness, even if they're dead. If we believe that they're still alive.
Isn't that the beauty of the Orthodox Church? Is that it doesn't end. And, every time you're in church, they're on the other side of that iconostas, just waiting. So it doesn't end.
Yeah.
It doesn't end just because they're in the ground.
Yeah, I mean, you could say, it was a little late in the lifetime to tell them that you love them, to ask them for that forgiveness. Yeah, I mean, that's why we should always do it. That's why, again, when he talks about anger and some of the other things previous, is to kind of keep that balance sheet, always at a zero all the time. So if you do something wrong, ask forgiveness. If someone angers you, let them know. Constantly do that, because again, that gets back to remembrance of death, right? Always dwelling on that, kind of morbid. But the point is that maybe tomorrow you won't have that opportunity to say, relative, forgive me. I love you. You always hear about that, how sad it is and stuff. But I mean, it's true. Now again, as Father says, I mean, they're not dead. You can still ask their forgiveness.
They
and
just
you have
get
to
answer.
Well, hopefully they are. I mean, but you have to still ask that forgiveness, because if you're still sorry, then you should ask forgiveness. Absolutely. And again, I'm not trying to kind of make it sound kind of Ouija board or something like that, obviously. That's not the idea. You know what I'm saying?
I know.
It's just that, you still have that, and that's a hurt that you're harboring.
Right.
And I'm sure that if they're Christians, they certainly wouldn't want you to have that hurt harbor, and I'm sure that they would certainly forgive you.
Just to sum up how difficult this step really is, can anybody here actually think of a specific instance where somebody wronged you horribly and you truly forgot and forgave them? Truly. And never said anything about it ever again after that? One instance.
Okay, I think of one instance.
It's hard.
It really is, yeah.
Because so often we don't do this step. We skip this
Right.
step, and we'll say that we forgive them, and we might for a couple days, and then something will remind us. And that you remember what that jerk did to me?
Well, I'd like to say I
6 months
can't
ago?"
remember because I've forgotten it. So.
Well, yeah, right. That's what.
I mean, that's what I'm going to rest on.
But it's hard. It's really hard to. This is a hard step to master.
Right.
Well, I think that I don't know if it's an American thing or what, or just a casualty of our modern society, but I think how people deal with that is, and how I've dealt with it, is I just exclude those people from my life.
There you go. You ignore them.
The ones
Avoid
that you
them.
can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the list is getting longer. I mean, because as I grow older, I become less tolerant.
Yes.
Yeah, you hear, I don't want to be around toxic
St. Bruce
people.
the
Yeah,
Hermit,
yeah.
eventually,
So
right?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I
which
just,
is
I guess
probably a
what
good
has become my catchphrase is, I'm just too old to tolerate a fool anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a very unchristian thing, but it's the truth. Think
Right.
about it. I just, I mean, in midlife, it's half over for me. And so my attitude sometimes is, I just don't have time for this anymore.
Well, yeah.
And it's wrong. I think it's wrong to feel, I don't feel burdened or chastened by it, or like it's something that weighs on my psyche, but I think it is something that, it's not the proper attitude, or at least viewed as the proper attitude. But I think that's how many Americans deal with it now. When you look at our family situation, you choose avoidance.
Sure, but I mean, still, that comes back to that kind of forgiveness. Do you still forgive them for whatever put you in that situation? I mean, if you can do that and let go of that grudge, let go of that anger, then I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, there's family members
to do when you don't see them anymore.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
Kind of a.
But here's the thing. Sometime you're going to have to see them. Believe it or not, sometime. I mean, weddings, funerals.
Yeah, but is it that one action that offended you, does that make up that whole person? It could have been, they could be a great person, but you can't dwell on just the one action that might have hurt
It's more
you.
of a cumulative effect.
Because if it's just one action, there might have been
Yeah,
had a bad day. Or
We're still talking.
You're a big person.
Brian,
Big person. Yeah.
Brian,
Maybe
that's
bad.
such a good point, though, because I know, like, for instance, what just came to mind when you said that was Facebook. How you can have, like, an impression of somebody from one
Right.
thing that they say, and then you base your opinion of what that person is like. And there's so much more to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Words on the internet are immortal.
Whatever you post there, and so
But I mean, people's skin sometimes is pretty thin too.
right. But I mean, I think that's something that we need to take in consideration. If you offend somebody, say I'm sorry. Unless if it was your intention to do that, then now the suggestion here is in order to do away with that wrong is to apologize anyways, even if it was empty words, so that you don't harbor that, and hopefully they don't harbor that against you.
So I'm amongst other things. My spiritual advisor.
Oh.
What did she say? He needs to work on that with those people he's talking about.
I would like to add another step to the ladder, and that's avoidance.
Sounds like you're on that step, man.
Is it tough enough,
But I think they already dealt with that step further in the beginning of the book when they were talking about the hermits that railed against the wall with their anger.
You listen.
But you do see that by forgiving and forgetting, you're not really forgetting, right? I mean, because if you could say, well, I'm just never going to talk to this person. I'll forgive them, it's fine, I'm never going to talk to this person, but you're not doing the step. Because by willfully forgetting, you're willfully forgetting for the reason that you want to forget.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So, I mean, you have to complete this step, and it has to be a complete forgetfulness of it. And it can't
So
just
does
be,
anyone ever complete this step?
it's very difficult.
I mean, other than the saints. Other than the
That's what you're
saints.
supposed to do.
Yeah, that's objective.
It's very, even some of the saints,
Yeah.
Peter and Paul hated each other. They did, and they had all kinds of issues. And I bet you had to take a lot of effort for them to complete that step.
Is it easier to be Jewish?
Easier to be Protestant?
You don't get a choice. You don't get a choice here. Sorry.
You are Jew. You're Jew for Jesus.
You're only
Jew for
judged on what
Jesus,
you
yeah.
know. You already know what God's faith.
Father Deacon,
But
thinking about what John said,
Sure.
it just keeps going through my mind about being the one, like it says here, to go first
Right.
and say, forgive me for any way that I have hurt you. I don't know if this is an Orthodox way of looking at it, but when you think about it, Jesus, in doing what he did, he took all the blame. We were the ones that were totally in the wrong in every way. But what he did, he took all the blame.
And what did he say on the cross?
And then here we are holding on to these petty little things.
Right. If anyone should have kept a grudge, it should have been Christ. Right? I mean, you have to get a lot of things there to get upset about and to take and
But our
forgive them.
damn pride, I don't,
And that's what it is.
I think about the very few times that I have been able to do this.
It's
To go to somebody first when they have been the one that I
Right,
felt hurt.
right.
And why can't we? We're just so prideful.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It keeps coming back to that. I mean, if you probably put this whole lesson, if you can get rid of pride, let's start out with that step.
Right.
Get rid of that, and it's a run up to the top.
Right,
really.
right.
Is it okay to start out, there's only one person that is holding me back, it's you, and I'm doing this because I don't want to hold on to it anymore. It's hurting me more though, or that would not be a full,
Well, I mean, I guess the thing I would be careful of is turning around and kind of saying, your problem is that you're holding me back. I mean, I would just personally, I would just say, I put the whole pride aside and just say, look, I'm sorry, forgive me for what I've done. I've done something obviously to upset you because there seems to be this between us, or maybe you even know what it is. Forgive me for what it is. There was the morning prayers, how does it go? Something about forgive those who envy and affront me and do me mischief, and don't let them perish through me a sinner. So if you look at it from that standpoint, forgive those who do mischief, who do things mean to me, because of me, they may perish. Don't let them perish through me a sinner. And that's part of the morning prayer. There's a card up there that has it in there. And if you kind of pray through it, but if you stop for a minute and think and go, oh, that's pretty tough, because what you're saying is, again, you're taking on that responsibility not only for your salvation, but for somebody else's. I mean, and again, it's not like this whole woe is me, I got all the problems of the world, but I mean, we do things that unintentionally, that for whatever reason, somebody has to hate us for, or has to get back at us for, or something like that. And if you look at it from that standpoint, it's like, again, here's that mirror. Well, the reason that person is now in that sin, for some reason, is because of me. So Lord, forgive me and help me not to do things that could aggravate people, that could cause them to sin, and then put their own salvation in peril. So I mean, I just think that's kind of an interesting prayer, an interesting way of looking at that. But yeah, you brought up a good point. That's kind of maybe that's a good place to stop. So I went over, and that is to forgive as Christ forgave on the cross. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Now, what is he saying? He's saying forgive them for their own ignorance of what they're doing. Obviously, they don't understand. I mean, if they knew that this is the Son of God, that this was their salvation, maybe they wouldn't do it. I don't know. I know there's people today who should understand it and still, in a sense, crucify Christ all the time. But if we look at that level of forgiveness, someone who had all the right in the world to be totally mad at people, to hold a grudge, I mean, wouldn't that be great? Like the last great act of defiance, just to sit there and start cursing them and saying, you don't really know, you don't get it, But no, instead it's like, I forgive you, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
And not only did he have the right, but he had the power.
The power,
to do it too.
Exactly.
It just magnifies everything. He could, and he says, I could send a legion of angels and
Wipe
and that's
everybody
wipe everybody out.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it just adds to that. That's why that is such a powerful.
The fact that our hearts are beating right now, it's just by the grace of God.
Exactly. Yeah.
Seriously.
Every breath we take.
Yeah. So, and also he goes on here, it says, forgive quickly and you will be abundantly forgiven. To forget wrongs is to prove oneself truly repentant. So obviously what he's doing here is tying it in to our repentance is the ability to forget those wrongs. So if we say forgive me, yet still remember those sins, if we come to confession and still hold those grudges, then we haven't truly repented. And that's the whole idea of confession. Repentance is to repent of those sins, is to reflect on those and ask forgiveness of them. But also, and what is repentance? That's that complete turn away from that sin, not to take it and put it somewhere else and pull it out again when I need it. It's that complete turn away from it. Let's see here. So kind of finish it off. Last paragraph. Even the most devout Christians can be brutally unforgiving. We talked about that. For though we may know the gospel like the back of our hands, yet we manage to make excuses and sins, referring to Psalms 140, 141, even to the point of applying wishful hermeneutics to the scriptures in order to justify our own weakness. Forgiveness is something the majority of Christians struggle with, whether they care to admit it or not. And we talked about that. That is really, really the tough thing, even
now
for all the
that's
Christians.
what Jack was doing, the wishful hermeneutics.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Brian had hit him, and so then he thought of, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So if he hit me, he must want me to hit him.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why he said he had him.
Yeah, see?
That's wishful hermeneutics.
Makes perfect sense.
Okay.
And if you forgive 7 times 70, right? Once you've reached that, 490 times, then you can stop, right?
Does everybody know what hermeneutics is, real quick?
I'm sorry.
Does everybody know what that is?
No.
The study of hermeneutics is like the study of the context behind the words of Scripture. So like, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, does that mean that we should take revenge on everybody? If you read the passage, it's a limitation, You take my eye, I can't kill you over it.
Right.
So I mean, there's little things that people will take Scripture out of context. And you have to know hermeneutics and everything behind the reason that they wrote what they wrote.
Right. Good, thank you. Anything else? I think we pretty well covered it.
You need to read the last paragraph, I interrupted you.
Oh, okay. But while we must always be compassionate to human weakness, very important, and not condemn Christians for being nothing more than human, we should at the very least learn to ask God to help us and have pity on us for being unforgiving. That would be a start. I agree. Alas, too many of us refuse to even admit that we should forgive, and we fail to see how hypocritical we are for not doing so. Thus we turn Christ's commandment to forgive into naive platitude rather than a very real and stern commandment by which we shall all be judged. Let us all pray thus: Lord, I believe I should forgive. Help me to really believe it. They're referring to Mark 9:24. So, yeah.
That's tough.
That's tough. So
the toughest service of the year for me is Forgiveness Sunday.
yeah, and I think
And what do most people do?
they skip out.
They don't stop.
Yeah, avoid it. It's very interesting. If you announce it and say that we have Forgiveness Sunday, I think what you should do is do a surprise Forgiveness Sunday.
Well, you know what? Everybody that's sitting here, we've taken attendance, and you know the date that it'll be next year. You can plan ahead. No vacations.
Take it a week before.
Yeah.
It is truly be the blessing of the blessed and most pure in the mother of our God. Honor than the cherubim, more glorious beyond compare than the seraphim. Without defilement you gave birth to God the Word. Truth and Tokos we magnify you. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.